What's good, YouTube? Cardfight K here. AQUA Life Baby. You already know. I'm just out here on my deck, just chilling. It's cold. Supposed to have a blizzard soon, so you know it is what it is. But today, guys, I wanted to do a discussion video. I wanted to talk about a few issues I have in the game, but this video's topic is going to be on the issue of stride enablers and my issue with stride enablers in the game. Now, I do want to recognize a few things before I get to that. One thing is stride enablers I recognize are a necessity for some decks. Decks like Gear Chronicles, and let's just go with Gear Chronicles for example. Gear Chronicles and Thavas. Gear Chronicles is the marquee deck that Booster was trying to push for their stride format and the whole stride generation thing. And that deck, you need to be able to stride. A lot of their really good cards are generation break. A lot of really good cards and a lot of decks are generation break restricted, meaning that you need to be able to stride in order to unlock the abilities of your deck, which means you need to be able to stride early and often. You want to stride as soon as you get to turn 3 or to your turn 3. You want to be able to stride when you ride your grade 3. Very important, very important. And stride enablers help in that regard, where you don't have to rely on having multiple grade 3s in your hand, where you have a grade 1 in your hand, that's a 1 card drop for, where you don't have to sacrifice a perfect guard and a grade 2, double grade 2, triple grade 1, things like that in order to stride so you can unlock the abilities of your deck. I understand all that about a stride enabler and why they're pretty good, but they do two things that kind of annoy me. One of the things that they do is that I have an issue with stride enablers is that, one, that they are a necessity for some decks, and it takes away from the deck construction. It takes away from the potential of deck construction of what you could put into your deck. Like, let's say I have a dream, I want to run 4 Orthea and 4 Stacy in my deck, but I have to cut out space because I need to run those stride enablers. I have to cut out certain cards in the deck because I need to run the stride enablers, because the deck doesn't work if I don't stride. If I don't stride, I can't use Orthea, I can't use Magnum Assault, I can't even use our beast, who's Lambro. Same with Gear Chronicles. You can't use Next Stage, you can't use Glimmer Breath, you can't use Amber, some of the time leap stuff you can't even use because you need to be able to stride. And so you don't want to sit there and give up a perfect guard and a grade 2, especially in this meta. You generally don't ever want to give up a perfect guard to stride, because that just opens you up to some nasty push turns by your opponent and some unneeded damage that you do not want to take. But that's what stride enablers are, guys. They kind of take away from what you want to do because they're a necessity. Like, you're running 14 grade 1s, okay? That means 8 slots are already taken up by necessities. If I say stride enablers should be run at no less than 3, but some decks need it at 4 because it is a necessity and you need to see them early and as often as possible. So let's say you're running 4, so that means that you have 8 slots taken up, your sentinel units, your perfect guards, and then you have your stride enablers. Okay, so now you have 6 slots left. 6 slots left. Maybe if you're running 12 grade 2s, you have 5 slots left where you put in your other grade 1s, cards that you want on the field as boosters. So it kind of takes in that regard. You're gonna have to cut out a few things. Like, I really want to run 4 Ortheas and 3 Stasias, whatever it is, but I have to cut some out for I have to cut some out for the stride enablers and things like that, because they're just a necessity, and it's just something that you're just going to have to live with in certain decks. Again, if you don't want to run 4 stride enablers, you don't have to, but in certain decks, guys, and especially in this meta, you want to see your stride enablers early and often, and the best way to see your cards early and more often is to run a high number of them, between 3 and 4, 4 being the best. And they're not the cards that you want to ride either. You don't really want to ride them either, because you want to save them in your hand to stride. Now, that leading off into my next issue is saving them in your hand to stride with. You don't want to save, you want to have boosters field. You want, sometimes you're sitting there thinking like, well, I really want to make this 16k column or this nice 18k column to push out, those 10k shields out of my opponent's hand. At the same time, I need to stride this turn so I can do certain things. And I don't want to give up a double Magnum Assault or a double Tidal Assault, or so I can stride, and then I lose out on the ability of calling other things out. So I can just use this 1 card drop to stride. But that means that since this is the only grade 1 in my hand that I have to use, and I don't want to use my perfect guard as a booster because I need to save it for the next turn, for guarding, whatever, that means that I have to boost with a trigger, which takes a 10k shield out of my hand, as well as make much worse number, where my opponent has to guard for a 5k shield as opposed to a 10k shield in certain situations, or it just leaves it open to a dead intercept, from a dead card anyways. So you don't really want to. The thing is that, and I've run into the situation too, guys. You don't really want to call out your stride enablers to the field, because you want to see them in your hand to stride. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have, grade 3s in your hand, which is why I like Mitros as my starter, because it gives me a grade 3 in my hand that I can use to stride with. That would be dead in my hand otherwise, and I can use my stride enabler to call for a nice solid 7k boost. Things like that. But in situations where you're not guaranteed to stride for the following turn, you have a decision to make. Well, I can stride with my grade 3, then call this out to boost and hope that I draw into a stride enabler so I can go into my next age or my Lambros for the following turn. Or I can sacrifice some power and use this guy and save this card in my hand to stride with. And sometimes, guys, I really hate making those types of decisions, especially when it comes to riding. It's like, well, this is the only grade 1 I have, so now I have to ride it, and I have a grade 3 in my hand, but I'm not guaranteed to stride next turn. So by the time I get into grade 3, I hope to have drawn into another grade 3 or a stride enabler, because I don't really want to give up, double Magnum Assault, double Tile Assault, a Tidal and a High Tide, an Adelaide and a Saber Flow and things like that. You don't want to give up those type of cards, but you might have to in order to stride, so that you can actually use the abilities of your deck. So that's just my issue with stride enablers, guys. I understand that they're important and stuff, but they're one of those things where you have to take into consideration when you're making your deck and making your certain plays, how much of a necessity is it to your deck to be able to see those cards early and often and get your stride, start striding. How important is stride in your deck and whatnot. Blue Waves I can see as an exception, because Anger Boy's GB2 skill is really, really good. Striding is a necessity. You do need to be able to get that first stride off, so you want to see a stride neighbor early and often, but you can definitely live off of his GB2 skill because it's so good. But that's just one example, guys. Definitely put in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on stride enablers? Do you guys have an issue with stride enablers? How are they affecting you, especially when it comes to in-game decision making, when you got to make those tough choices of whether to make some nice numbers or hold it back and make much worse numbers. Put in the comment section below, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace. I'm cold.